is the typical podcast listener? That is a really, really good question. And I wondered that. I'm thinking, is it that little lady down there? Is that her there? I don't think so. I don't know. It could be. Edison researchers, they have given us some statistics. I actually found it hard to get really good, solid statistics. And Edison researchers, when I looked at the boundaries of their research, it wasn't very wide. But you know what? You work with what you're given. So this is what they found out. 1 in 4 podcast listeners plug their MP3 players or smartphones into their car audio system nearly every day. And then I put in brackets, probably on the way to and from work. 1 in 4. Okay, so we can all add. That means 25% of people listen on the way to work. That's a big component of people who are awake, alert, choosing to listen. They're not forced. They're actually deciding, I want to hear what this guy has to say and what they're talking about. So that's pretty awesome, I think. I was listening to a podcast not long ago. I'm certain it was James Franco talking to Luke Moulton. I'm absolutely certain. I can't be 100%. I think it was. And they're both big podcasters. So in this particular podcast show, James was talking about how he'd somehow done some survey and he found out that he looked at his analytics, 50% of people listening to his podcast were at a desk, a computer, PC or Mac, whatever. So what do you take away from this? 25% listen in the car, 50% listen at their desk. And of course, this is a guide because you don't really know, anything other than, those things. And 5%, well, maybe they listen when they're exercising or, I don't know, sitting there in bed. I don't know. Look, I guess what I'm trying to say is that a lot of people do listen at the desk. And a lot of people also just listen in the car. Now, if they're listening in the car, they can't watch a video. So if you're going to do podcasts that are videos, you're eliminating probably 25% of potential listeners. Now, does that matter? No. Maybe you have to do videos. Maybe you don't have that choice. So don't judge yourself on that or think that's going to determine the success or failure of a product. Not at all. But I think you need to be aware that different listeners are going to have different ideals and goals. Now, if they know all your podcasts are video and they're only listening to podcasts on the way to work, they're not going to subscribe to your show. And when you go into iTunes, as you saw before, you can see if it's a video pretty quick. But at the end of the day, don't let that guide you. Just be aware. Just be aware of those boundaries. I guess that's what I'm trying to say to you. Understand what it's all about. Podcast listeners, Edison researchers also state that active podcast listeners are not receptive to normal interruptive advertising, but are more receptive to targeted messages. Okay, so I thought this was interesting. In other words, they like you to talk about stuff. They don't like you to sell them stuff. I guess what they're also saying, if you read between the lines, is that they accept that you will promote stuff. I wonder if a lot of people who listen to podcasts actually understand that you can't commercialize the podcast. Maybe they don't even understand that. Maybe they do. And that's why they put up with this show is brought to you by blah, 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 because they know that otherwise, the person running that podcast would be getting no money, and they probably think, oh, well, that's good. At least they'll be making some money from this. This is why there's that opportunity to talk about whatever you want, as long as you're giving it in a value-adding way. You might be talking about a book that you've written on gardening, and you might be talking about the best way to prune roses, because that's from chapter 2 on how to prune roses. So you've inadvertently sort of plugged your book, but you're still giving the value of teaching anyone who's listening to your gardening podcast show the best way to prune roses. My gardener tells me that's a very hot topic. So blogging and podcasting. So this is a really important parallel to draw, because I think this is why bloggers have the advantage over other people to do a podcast. Why would a blogger create a podcast? Well, first of all, you want to reach a new audience. People don't read your blog yet. Reaching a new audience is really important if you want your blog to grow. It's so easy to get complacent as a blogger because it gets comfortable. But if you want to go into things like monetization and earning money and all that sort of thing, you've got to keep growing. It's kind of what sponsors want to see. And it goes with the territory. The more people that visit your blog, the more likely they'll click onto your Google AdSense ad. It's just, I guess it's common sense. So reaching a new audience is important. Getting to know your blog tribe on a more personal basis. You can write till you're blue in the face, but sometimes until they hear your voice, they really don't get it. They don't really get who you are. Create new income opportunities, sales and promotion. this is probably the number one reason most people go into podcasting, or anything for that matter, except maybe blogging, because that's just so, lackadaisical, isn't it? Podcasting is very, assertive and out there and profound in a lot of ways. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can understand why a lot of people go into it to make money. And I think it's also a major reason they stop doing it too, because they can't gauge the return on investment. It's so important. We do talk about that later, because it is important. People who can't visit your blog much might be happy to listen to you in video format. Now, I cannot tell you how many times I've been on the internet, but I just don't have time to plow through every blog and every blog post. But sometimes it's nice to have an audio playing in the background. It's not distracting. Sometimes it's wonderful. And everybody's different, and they could be listening to the audio in the car, maybe they were exercising, all that sort of thing. But sitting down in front of a PC to assertively read your blog, it might just be something that they just don't get done much, especially if they're commuters to the city for work or wherever they go to work. Maybe they're on the road a lot, like tradesmen and so forth, because these people don't even sit at a computer for social reasons much at all. They do it for work, perhaps, but essentially, like tradies and that, they just, it doesn't even happen. So this is a great way to reach those people. Now, they might know of your blog, and they might have heard about your podcast from your blog, but they don't actually get time to visit your blog much, but they've jumped on the opportunity to play your podcasts every time they can, once you've told them that there's that opportunity out there. Now, you can talk about things that are hard to write about. When you try to sometimes express yourself in a blog post, and it's just really tough. You might be really angry, or you're really upset. You just can't transpire that. It's hard to show emotion. It's hard to show compassion. It's possible, but it's not the same. And that's the other advantage of doing a podcast, is that you can actually have your written podcast, your written blog post, and then from there, you can have a little, player there where you just push play and it says, "Hi, thanks for listening. Look, I just want to elaborate on what's in this blog post, because although I've said I'm really angry about it, I don't think people really understand how angry." And then you can really get into it, and get angry. "Oh, I'm really angry about this. It's wrong," So that's another benefit of podcasting for bloggers. Now, also, you can network with other bloggers and podcasters, and I can't tell you how many doors it's opened to me by having a podcast, and as a blogger, which I had for years. There's no comparison. I feel like, I can't even put into words. I mean, the people I've met already, and I've only been doing it for such a short time, and of course, podcasters as well. People that always, I've seen, look, I'll give you an example. I've gone into podcasts and I've listened to it, and then they've got this lady who'll come up and say, "Hi, I'm just making this up, okay? Hi, this is Janine from Get Fit Podcast. I'm just welcoming you to Jane's podcast today topic, how to best dress yourself for work," or I don't know. And then the lady who does the Get Yourself Dressed for Work podcast goes on and does the intro for the lady who does the fitness podcast. You know what I'm saying? Like, they hook up and they say, "Hey, do you want to, and they're just networking left, right, and center. Fantastic. I mean, that's just awesome. So it opens other doors. It introduces new opportunities. It will also help you build your online identity your way. I know blogging does that too, don't get me wrong, but you can take it another step even further, because you might write to you blue in the face, but people don't get an impression of you. But when they hear you talk, they're impressed, okay? They hear your confidence, they feel it. And if you're doing videos, even better. Make sure they're good quality, okay? But yeah, I mean, this is what I'm trying to say, is that it will help you build your online identity. I think some people call it building authority. Credibility, becoming an expert, helping become an expert. I mean, you've probably seen Brendan Burchard in America at the moment, who's just taken Americans by, and he's inspiring people left, right, and center to become experts in whatever they do. His argument is, and you know what? I agree. I totally agree. His argument is, no matter what you do, there's something that you do well that you can teach other people. And that, my dear, makes you an expert in that particular thing. Now, it may not make you a registered authority, but it makes you an expert if you can share that knowledge and educate and teach people. Now, I'm obviously excluding things where it's legislated that you do have to be registered to do it. So, for instance, legal and accounting and all that thing. But I'm talking about things like cooking. I'm talking about gardening. I'm talking about perhaps help raising your child, just sharing your experiences. I mean, millions of people, I suppose, maybe thousands of people are writing Kindle books all the time. and they are not any more expert than you or I. It's just that they know what they're writing about. Now, there are obviously a few internet marketers there that don't really know, and they've just got the information, or they've had someone write it for them, but that doesn't matter. What's important is that you focus on the fact that when you're building your authority online, there's a lot of ways to do it, and a podcast can definitely help you do that. And it shapes your personality, the way you want to be heard, the way you want to be seen. So it's a very powerful medium in that way. And of course, long last is you can have some fun. You know, it's different. You can laugh, you can joke, you can have serious chats, hard, boring jokes. You can sell stuff. You can do whatever you like. I mean, if you want subscribers, think like your audience. What do they want to hear? Because if whatever you do, they don't want to hear, they won't subscribe. And you kind of want subscribers, but we'll talk about that soon. Why do bloggers make great podcasts? Okay. Podcasting is a natural extension of blogging. Okay, you're just talking about, I mean, we already create content. We already understand all that. We understand how to network with people. You know, when you comment on someone else's blog, that's networking. When they comment on yours, that's networking. So we already understand all that. Bloggers understand the importance of a tribe and how to look after them, and that's by responding to them and acknowledging them. We already work online with a regular commitment, so we understand the restrictions or the boundaries, if you want to call that, of working online. The internet, sometimes it's slow. We all know that. We understand the basics of making money online, sell products, being an affiliate for Amazon or being an affiliate for anybody for that matter. Sponsorship, what that means. We also know the characteristics of a podcast needs, which is planning, consistency, and relevance. It's exactly the same formula that you apply to your blog. So with your blog, you plan out what you're going to talk about. You do it pretty much probably weekly, every third night, whatever it is you do. It's just that consistency that listeners get used to. And the relevance. So knowing what the characteristics of a podcast needs are, it will definitely get you ahead of podcasters who are new to all this sort of thing.